Today we are here for a story to be told and she's gonna tell it. So buckle in. My name's Kathy, that's Celeste.
Thank you. So today's case is, as always, a very controversial one. So I tried my best to stay non-biased with my research. I also tried to do the story in chronological order, but there are parts of it that are a little bit not. So just beware of that, and don't judge me. And if you have something to say, then say it. The case that I'm going to tell you today is the case of Kathleen and Michael Peterson, aka the staircase.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's a big one.
I like remember it briefly.
Yeah.
Briefly. But like I couldn't tell you anything about it, so I'm excited for this.
I tried to pick apart some of the most important pieces and then kind of compile it into one thing. But if you have anything to add, please add it. I'm getting nervous. So Michael Ivor Peterson was born October 23rd, 1943 in Tennessee, making him a Scorpio. Not being born in Tennessee, but born in October. This is a picture of him.
Oh, okay.
He graduated from Duke University with a bachelor's in political science, and he was in a fraternity. And after he graduated in 1965, he took a civilian job with the U.S. Department of Defense, and he also enlisted in the Marines, but he was discharged because he got an injury during a car crash. That left him permanently disabled. Returning to the United States, he became a government consultant, and he married his first wife, Patricia Sue, who was a school teacher. They had 2 children together, Clayton and Todd Peterson. Here's a picture of Patricia Sue and one of their sons.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yeah, she's gorgeous. She looks like Lily Tomlin, at least in that picture.
Like a young Lily Tomlin.
Yeah. And in 1999, Michael ran in the Durham mayoral. How do you say that? Mayoral.
And I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Okay.
Mayoral.
Mayoral. In 1999, Michael ran for mayor in Durham. He told people that he had been awarded a Silver Star, a Bronze Star with Valor, and 2 Purple Hearts when he was like doing his speech or whatever. And if you don't know what those are, they're kind of like military honorary medals.
Wait, but he got discharged.
Yeah. It turns out that he lied about that, but he had all the medals, he just didn't have documentation for them. He said that he received 1 Purple Heart after being hit with shrapnel, which is a fragment of a bomb.
Oh.
Yeah, and he said that another time he got a Purple Heart because he got shot.
Oh.
And then later he admitted that he did not sustain those injuries, but he was in a car accident and that he was discharged because of that. The car accident took place in Japan, where he was stationed after the war as a military police officer. So kind of a weird thing to lie about, but I think it's important to include. So Michael and Patricia lived in Germany for a majority of their marriage with their sons Clayton and Todd. And during the time that they lived there, they met a young couple called Elizabeth and George Ratliff. They had 2 kids of their own called Margaret and Martha. You'll want to put a pin in this for later. George Ratliff ended up passing away, leaving Elizabeth widowed. Because of this, the Petersons really stepped in and kind of took Elizabeth under their wing, you know, and helped her with the girls because they were really little.
That'd be hard to be suddenly left like a single parent.
Yeah, the Petersons got a lot closer with Elizabeth and her 2 kids. And then shortly after that, Elizabeth passed away. And so that left the 2 girls orphaned. Because the Petersons had been so close to the girls' parents, Michael ended up adopting the 2 girls. He went from having 2 boys of his own to then having 4 kids altogether. And in 1987, Michael and Patricia actually got divorced, and Michael moved with the 2 girls back to America, to North Carolina. His sons initially stayed in Germany with their mom, but eventually they also moved back to North Carolina with their dad.
Oh, okay.
So he was taking care of all 4 kids on his own. So in 1989, 2 years after his divorce, Michael moved in with a woman named Kathleen Atwater. They ended up getting married in 1997.
Oh.
When Michael was 54 and Kathleen was 44. Kathleen was born February 21st, 1953, making her a Pisces. She was a successful business executive at this company called Nortel, and it was a company that produced telecommunication equipment. So I think like phones and stuff, you know, like computer phones, I don't know. And Kathleen did really, really well there. She was really successful there, but the company started to fail. It ended up going bankrupt. That, you know, put a hardship on Kathleen. She was said to be really, really smart and kind, that she had an excellent sense of humor. People really looked up to her. They thought that she was just really cool. She was really, really beautiful, and she had a daughter of her own named Caitlin that joined the Peterson family. So now altogether there were 5 kids. Todd, Clayton, Martha, and Margaret, the 2 adopted daughters, and then Michael's now stepdaughter, Caitlin.
Okay.
So here's a few pictures of Kathleen and Michael.
She kind of looks like the first wife a little bit, like brunette, longer face.
Yeah.
Right?
Short hair.
Yeah. Wow.
And then here's a picture of them with all the kids. And I put labels just so you can kind of see who's who. Everyone said that Michael and Kathleen were like the perfect couple. They were just a match made in heaven. Everyone said that they were always together and they were always having a good time. They loved to just talk for hours. They would stay up late at night just talking and enjoying each other's company. They were just known to be that way. But this is where the story takes a turn, of course. On December 9th, 2001 at 2:40 a.m., emergency services received a call from a panicked Michael Peterson. The 911 call is copyrighted, so I won't be playing it today. I recommend that you go and listen to it so that you can form your own opinion of the call. You can probably find it on YouTube, or you can watch the Staircase documentary on Netflix. I'll go ahead and just go through it so that you can kind of get an idea of what was said. The recording has been the basis of a lot of controversy because Michael's behavior was kind of strange, and it's been criticized over the years. So Michael called 911 and he told them that Kathleen had fallen down the stairs. And in the audio, he sounds really, really flustered and a little bit frustrated as he's speaking with the 911 operator. First, she asks him where the emergency is. He tells her his address, and then she asks him what kind of accident it was, and he says that she fell down the stairs, but that she's still breathing. The operator asks if she's still conscious. Michael kind of hesitates for a minute. It sounds like he's struggling a little bit, and then he says that she's not conscious.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah. So the operator then asks him how many stairs Kathleen fell down, and he struggles again. And he's like 15, 20, I don't know. Like, that's how he says it. That has been under a lot of criticism as well, because people think that he should know how many stairs she fell down. But I can understand also being panicked and like just being like, I don't know, get the cops here, you know?
Yeah, like I can't think straight. I don't know how many stairs there are.
Yeah, and that's to me, that's kind of like how he sounds on the call. Like that he's just like flustered because he's like, why does that matter? Like, get the cops here, you know? Get the ambulance here.
Yeah.
And especially since he said that she was still breathing, I can understand why there would be
like an urgency
in his voice.
Yeah. That makes sense to me too, because I feel like something happened to you and somebody was like, what's this incredibly specific question? I would be like, I don't know, like hurry up and get here, you know?
Yeah.
So I can understand. And also it's kind of tough to, when accidents happen, to be like, oh, I think it's weird that you reacted this way, when it's like a really stressful situation, you know?
Yeah.
Or like loss or stuff like that. I feel like it's kind of like interesting how people are quick to judge, just in general. I'm not talking about just this, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah,
so a few more seconds goes by while Michael is still panicking on the other end of the phone, and then he ends up disconnecting the call.
Oh.
So she's like trying to help him, and he ends up just hanging up, and you can hear him in the recording. He's like breathing hard. Yeah. It sounds like tearful, heavy breathing. Michael calls 911 again at 2:46 a.m. asks where they are, again panicking. He's like, where are they? Like, get them here as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Then and the operator says that they're coming, and Michael tells the operator that Kathleen is no longer breathing, and then he hangs up again. Just before we go on, I think it's important to just state an irrefutable fact that you don't know how you would act if you were in a situation like this. So the police arrived at the scene. Kathleen was where Michael had described, at the bottom of the stairs. And this is where we're gonna get a little bit graphic, so I'm gonna go ahead and put a timestamp on the screen right now, and you can take the time to skip over this part if you want. So yeah. Because what Michael had not mentioned on the phone call at any point was that there was so much blood everywhere.
Oh my god.
That's what's kind of weird to me about the phone call. He immediately says that she fell down the stairs. I feel like if I saw that much blood walking into a scene like that, and you were at the bottom of the stairs, or anybody was at the bottom of the stairs, I wouldn't automatically assume that they fell down the stairs with that much blood. I would think that there's like an attacker in the house or something. He never mentions it on the phone call at all.
Ooh, that's kind of weird. That's really weird, actually.
Yeah. Kathleen is in a pool of her own blood. There's blood on the stairs, on the walls, higher up on the walls, like on the picture frames.
Wow.
Across the hallway from where she's laying. Like, she's laying on the stairs in the hallway, and there's blood on this wall, as well as like all over the stairway. It's insane. Like,
whoa.
I've seen the crime scene photos, and I'm not gonna post them here out of respect for Kathleen. I think if you look at those pictures, you'll understand. The way she's laying is so odd. Michael claims that she fell down the stairs. Her head is resting on the last step. I would picture somebody falling down the stairs and maybe lying on their back, or maybe partially on the stairs still. And I'll show a picture, but it looks to me like maybe she was being held and then she was placed there. It's so weird. And the stairs are curved at the bottom, so like they go straight down and then they curve. It's hard for me to picture how she got there considering physics. And here's a picture.
That is so odd. That doesn't look like she would have fell down.
Yeah, and we know that Michael was holding her body. He stated that she died in his arms. So with that being said, he was holding her, but he didn't move her body that we know of. I have a ton of sources, and I also watched the Staircase documentary first when around the time that it came out. They had it on HBO for a while, and then they just put recently, like a couple years ago, I think, they put the whole thing on Netflix, so you can go and watch that as well. And I rewatched bits and pieces of that when researching. And in the documentary, Michael says that from the very beginning, from the time that the police got there, they were acting super suspicious of him. Wherever he went, whether it was like into another room or outside, there was always a cop there. Todd Peterson, Michael's son, he was there before the police got there, but he was there after the ambulance and the paramedics arrived on the scene. And he said that the cops were really intense with him and his dad. Like, they wouldn't let them talk to each other. They were putting them in different rooms. Todd had his friend there. The cops wouldn't even let him talk to his friend. The cops, on the other hand, said that Todd was really disrespectful and that he was not cooperating at all. And that he was like making signals out the window or something like that, like to somebody outside. So it's just weird. But I just wanted to include it because I was like, what's the truth? Was Todd being weird, or were the cops being weird?
And we know one party that is often untruthful.
Exactly. Yeah, so Michael's two adopted daughters got there. The ones that he adopted from Germany, Martha and Margaret. They got there a little bit later, and they could see the yellow tape around the house. They said that at this point they didn't have any details of what happened, and that Michael came up to them and said that he didn't do anything, and the girls said that they believed him. The cops entered immediately and began treating this as a crime scene. They were, sectioning things off, questioning the family. The more that the cops talked to Michael, the more they began to kind of question his story, because it seemed so unlikely with the amount of blood. And the lead detective said that the scene was just not consistent with a fall down the stairs. I can understand why they would want to investigate that further,
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense if somebody fell really hard on their head that there would be a pool of blood around them.
Yeah.
But like in different places, like the wall across,
Yeah, blood spatter.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. I can understand how after something really traumatic happens, it would be intense if the cops were being intense. But the alternative, I feel like, would be more frustrating if something bad did happen. I think it would be better to treat it as a crime scene than to not.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I can see how if there was no foul play, how like additionally traumatic that would be.
Exactly. Michael said that he and Kathleen watched a movie that night, America's Sweethearts. And then after having some wine, they decided to go out to the pool around 12 a.m. to just hang out and talk. After a little while, Kathleen went inside to go to bed, and he stayed outside smoking his pipe. And this was around 12:30 a.m. according to him. The 911 call was made at 2:40 a.m. and according to his story, Kathleen went in around 12:30 a.m. So there's 2 hours unaccounted for. That's what's really strange to me is like, did he just stay outside the whole time? Like smoking that whole time for 2 hours? If that's the case, that means that he was out there for 2 hours and then he went inside and he found Kathleen, who had either just fallen down the stairs or had fallen down the stairs and had been there for a while, but she was miraculously still breathing when he found her. You know, just, it's just so, and it's like, it's possible. Anything is possible. But it just feels like such a unlikely coincidence. But I don't know, you know?
Yeah, that's a long time to be like, I don't know what happened during this time.
Yeah, that whole time.
Yeah.
He claimed that he didn't hear any screaming, so it's not like he heard something and then he decided to go inside. He didn't hear anything. He was outside for 2 hours and then went inside and then found her.
If she went to bed at 12:30, like, even if she tripped, you know, it's if it was like she went to bed, oh, she woke up and she was kind of hungry and she went to get a snack. I don't know. That's just, it's weird.
You want him to do you so much you could do anything?
Yeah. He told the police that she must have fallen down the stairs after drinking some wine and taking some Valium. And maybe the mixing of the chemicals made her dizzy and she fell down the stairs. And from the beginning, he always references this incident as an accident. Just kind of how we discussed a little bit earlier. If I came into the house and I saw a scene like that of my loved one, I would not immediately think that it's an accident.
Yeah.
I would think that something else happened and I would be telling the operator that, and I would for sure be mentioning the blood. I wouldn't already have an explanation or a theory as to what happened, you know?
Yeah, I feel the same.
It's a little strange. Like,
yeah.
I think if the police got there and they were like, what happened? I would be like, I thought that she fell down the stairs, but I don't know for sure. Like, maybe something else happened. I don't know, you know? I would think. I would think I would.
That's what you, same.
Yeah.
I would think that that's what I would say.
The staircase documentary is pretty biased, I think. I think it's definitely more from Michael's perspective.
Oh.
And I think that it's really focused on Michael's innocence rather than Kathleen's passing.
That's kind of frustrating, just the idea of this whole documentary being built around somebody's innocence rather than the truth of what happened.
Yeah, the documentary does do a good job at kind of like showing what was happening behind the scenes, even though it was really biased. And like I said, Michael, when he saw his adopted daughters, he told them that he didn't do anything. I don't know when that was said. I don't know if it was like right when they got there or like after the cops were treating him weirdly. Yeah. But like either way, I feel like that's kind of a weird thing to say to your kids.
Yeah, rather than like something bad happened to your mom.
I'm so sorry that this happened, you know? I can also see how if you're being treated like you're guilty by the police, it would facilitate a defensive response, you know? I can see that as well.
I feel like one side of me wants to feel one way.
Yeah.
And then the other side of me is like, wait, what if not? You know?
Yeah. So with the evidence and everything that Michael was telling the police and everything that they found when they were at Michael's house, they concluded that they had enough to indict Michael on Kathleen's murder. According to the police, the evidence suggested that Michael had beaten Kathleen and there was a struggle. And the crime scene definitely looks that way.
Yeah.
December 20th, 2001, 11 days after the incident, Michael gets charged with the murder of Kathleen. When the toxicology report came out, it was revealed that Kathleen's blood alcohol content was 0.07% and the alcohol in her urine was 0.11%. And according to Google, a 5-ounce glass of wine, which is like a typical glass of wine, is 12%.
Okay, so she was sober basically.
Yeah. or a little tipsy.
Or a little tipsy.
But she did take between 5 and 15 milligrams of Valium. So combining the two could potentially cause dizziness, and combining the two substances also result in symptoms like lethargy, impaired motor control, a slowed heart rate, and difficulty breathing.
Oh.
The full autopsy report concluded that Kathleen had sustained a matrix of severe injuries, including a fracture to the superior cornu of her thyroid, of the left thyroid cartilage. She had 7 lacerations on the top and the back of her head.
Whoa.
Consistent with blows from a blunt object, had died from blood loss 90 minutes to 2 hours after sustaining the injuries. And that's actually something that's really strange about this case, is that the blood was dry when officers arrived on the scene. So one of the officers said that the blood was so dry that they didn't even need to put protective garments on. And I want you to put a pin in that. And it makes sense if Michael really was just sitting by the pool for 2 hours. But what's strange is that according to him, she died in his arms. Why was the blood dry? Or if she had been injured well before that, why did she suddenly die in his arms?
Yeah.
And his timeline does kind of match. So it's like if he was out there for 2 hours, then maybe she sustained the injury 2 hours prior and then bled out for 2 hours and then passed away. It's just so odd that he like coincidentally walked into the house and she was still breathing. Like I said, Michael was arrested on December 20th, 2001, and his kids are absolutely shocked. They 100% believed that he was innocent and they stood by him. The filming of the Staircase documentary started in February 2002, so about a month after Kathleen passed. That's when they started the documentary.
Wow.
Yeah, the way that Michael interacts with the filmmakers is so odd. Like, you just have to see it. I thought it was odd. I didn't see a lot of emotion from him, and I know there's like this thing with masculinity where you don't like show your emotions a lot, and so I could see how that may have taken part in his like interactions with them.
That's weird.
He doesn't show a lot of emotion. He seems really, really casual, making jokes here and there, like talking to them, just like smiling. There are parts where he's talking about Kathleen and he seems sad or like kind of down, but yeah, it's just weird. You just have to see it, and it's like everybody reacts different, but like you should watch it so you can form your own opinion.
Ooh.
And Michael said that he agreed to filming because he felt like the justice system was gonna fail him. In the documentary, he says that he understands that people from lower class communities wouldn't be able to afford the same privileges as him. I thought that was interesting, and I can also understand why he wouldn't believe in the justice system, you know? Here's a quote from the director of the documentary The Staircase. His name is John Xavier Lestrade, and he said, "When Michael was talking about his love with Kathleen, I could really feel the sincerity, but at the same time, there was this kind of mystery about this man. It was a really strange feeling." I thought the quote was pretty interesting, especially from the person that was spending a lot of time with him during the trial and like the case, you know?
Yeah.
This was the first statement that he made when he spoke out publicly for the first time. At this point, there wasn't a lot of information that had been released to the public, so this was kind of a big deal, Michael speaking out, and some people took it really negatively. Some people just took it with a grain of salt.
This news at 6.
Michael Peterson's supporters can't believe he's charged with the murder of his wife, Kathleen.
Kathleen was my life. I whispered her name in my heart 1,000 times. She is there, but I can't stop crying.
But a special
That's such a weird thing to say. It feels
I know.
scripted.
I know, the first time I saw that, I was like, so he goes to jail and then he's released on an $850,000 bond while he awaits trial.
Ooh.
And during that time, Michael was awaiting trial. The documentary was filming the defense prepare. They were at Michael's house a lot of the time, just going through different possibilities and stuff like that. They were just trying to see how they were going to present the case. There was a lot of time between Michael's initial arrest and when the trial actually began. There was a lot of time in between, and a lot happened during this time. Like I said, Michael's kids all believed that he was innocent. And Michael's ex-wife, Patricia Sue, the one that looked like Lily Tomlin, she even believed that he was innocent. But during this time, Kathleen's biological daughter, Caitlin, Here's a picture of her. She saw the autopsy report and she completely changed her mind. She 100% thought that Michael did it. And she actually told reporters that she was 100% sure that Michael did it.
Whoa.
And that Michael murdered her mother. She said that she loved Martha and Margaret like sisters, but ultimately she felt like she had to find justice for her mom.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I can understand that. And Kathleen's sister, her name is Candace Zamperini, she also thought that Michael was guilty of hurting her sister.
Oh.
And I think that I can say a lot that the family of Kathleen thought that Michael was guilty.
Yeah.
Did they suspect something all along?
And also he was the last one to see her alive that we know of, so it would make
Yeah.
sense that the family would think that.
Exactly. So his 2 adopted daughters and his 2 sons still stuck behind him. Then on October 29th, 2002, almost a year after Kathleen's passing, Caitlin filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Michael, and she was awarded with $25 million.
Whoa.
Michael's defense team, they did a lot in preparation for trial. For example, they had a blood spatter expert come and look at the blood spatter and try to understand what happened. And they also did like a sound test where some of them were standing out by the pool and then the others were playing a recording of a woman screaming and saying "help me" from the staircase and testing to see if they'd actually be able to hear it. They were testing different volumes and stuff like that, and you couldn't hear it. So that was interesting. It was really odd because during that whole test, Michael and Todd were there, and Todd, the son, I noticed that he was like kind of smirking when they were doing the sound test. I think he was smirking at something that maybe one of the people said, and he's standing right by the staircase when he does that. It's just weird to me because I feel like, why are you even there, you know? But also, like, why are you acting so casual standing right next to a crime scene that still hasn't been cleaned? Like, her blood is still everywhere and he's just standing there like so casual. And Michael too, it's like, I just don't understand why they're there, and I just feel like I wouldn't want to be there.
And like, even if he was laughing at something somebody said or anything, it's like the lightheartedness of that.
Yeah.
And standing there, you know?
Yeah.
If my presence was needed to be part of the investigation for some reason, then I would do it. But I wouldn't want to be there if that's where they died. I would be like, no, that hurts.
Yeah. And it's like, is it blatant indifference or is it because a tough stomach? Like, I don't know. Like, why are you there?
Yeah.
Something else happened during the period between Michael's arrest and the beginning of the trial. Remember how Elizabeth and George Ratliff passed away?
Oh, yeah.
Martha and Margaret's birth parents. Elizabeth Ratliff passed away by falling down the stairs. And with the similarities between Kathleen's and Elizabeth's death, the European authorities decided to reopen Elizabeth's case.
Smart.
Here's a picture of her.
Oh.
She looks exactly the same as Kathleen.
Yeah, they look exactly the same.
A little bit more about Elizabeth. She was born Elizabeth McKee in 1942 in Germany, and she was described as an artistic person. She played the acoustic guitar and she sang. She got married to a man named George Ratliff, who was a pilot, and they had 2 children together, Margaret and Martha. George passed away from a heart attack after being deployed. Then, like I mentioned earlier, Michael and Patricia came in the picture. They helped Elizabeth out with taking care of the kids and stuff like that. Then, on November 25th, 1985, Elizabeth died. She was found at the bottom of her stairs, laying in a pool of blood. And Michael was reported to be the last person that saw her, and the person that saw him said that he was running.
That screams guilt to me.
I know.
What else could that mean?
I know. So the German authorities reopened her case, like I said, and her body was exhumed after 17 years. And they did a new autopsy report on her, and they determined that she died from blunt force trauma to the head. That it was likely a result of a homicidal attack. What's interesting though is that the same medical examiner that did Kathleen's autopsy also did Elizabeth's.
What? That's wild.
So it's like, if the medical examiner was biased, could, you know, have an effect on the way that the autopsy report was done.
Wow.
according to what the defense team says in the documentary, Michael already told them about this incident and they were aware of it. So they were really upset when it was brought up because they were like, this kind of thing should not be brought up before trial. However, I think that I can understand why the prosecution would bring it up because the correlation between the two, even if it was an accident the first time with Elizabeth Ratcliffe, it almost feels like there are too many coincidences to be coincidences, you know?
Yeah, I feel like how often in real life do we hear about people dying from falling down the stairs? What are the chances that one man sees two women that look the same die that way and he's the last one to see both of them alive and he's innocent? I'm gonna remain neutral.
Yeah,
But that makes no sense to me.
I know. Same. So weird. So the defense team kind of said that the prosecution intentionally brought this up to paint Michael as this like staircase killer. However, it's like if you were on the prosecution team, why wouldn't you bring it up? The defense said that this would definitely sway the opinions of the public, and that was another reason why they were pretty upset about it. The lead defense attorney, his name is David Rudolph, and here's a picture of him.
The defense attorney?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And he's a really good defense attorney. He has worked on high profile cases and he's also worked in a lot of civil rights cases regarding wrongful convictions. There is so much information. I tried my best to do it in chronological order, but now that we're at the trial, it was a little bit harder for me to do it in chronological order because a lot of the sources are limited regarding the trial.
Yeah.
And then some of the other sources, like the staircase documentary, is so long. The actual trial is like split into so many pieces throughout the episodes.
Yeah.
So I ended up watching a bunch of episodes of the actual trial without anything cut out on Court TV. And I would recommend watching it on there if you're curious because they left a lot of information out on the documentary that was not included on the documentary.
Wow.
So, like I said, this is not in order, but I did my best. This part
That's fine, dude.
is a little messy. But.
Okay.
So, July 1st, 2003, roughly a year and a half since Kathleen's passing, Michael's trial begins. Here's a picture of David Rudolph and Michael.
Okay.
And there were 12 jurors, 4 men, 8 women, and the prosecution brought up Elizabeth Ratcliffe and pointed out how similar the deaths were. They introduced the death of Elizabeth into the trial, stating that this is where Michael got the idea to fake Kathleen's accident. So he did it 10 years ago or whatever, so he was like, well, it'll work this time, and did it again. That's kind of what the prosecution was saying.
Okay.
The defense, however, held on to Michael's initial explanation of what happened that night, that Kathleen had taken some Valium and had some wine, and she ended up getting dizzy and fell down the stairs. What's really interesting is that, remember I said her blood alcohol level was 0.07%? Yeah, so the legal driving limit is 0.8%. So she had less alcohol in her system than you would get arrested for.
Like way less.
Way less, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the people that the prosecution introduced during the trial was a man named Dan George. He works for the Durham Forensic Unit, and he arrived at the scene of the crime to begin his work. And one of the first things that he noticed was that there were paper towels everywhere and a towel placed under Kathleen's head, almost as if somebody was trying to clean something up. He also stated that the blood appeared to be dry, and he stated that this did not appear to be an accidental fall, that in his 20 years of tenure, it looked more like Kathleen was murdered. He said that he had seen plenty of falls down the stairs, and the most severe injury he ever saw was a broken limb.
Oh.
So it was really shocking for him to see this scene and have it be called an accident, you know?
Yeah, like that much blood, where normally the most dramatic scene is just like a broken limb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His team was in charge of taking pictures and documenting the scene and just like doing luminol tests and stuff, you know? He said that there was blood even outside, droplets of blood outside. He went outside to look for more blood and he found another droplet of blood outside, which was really interesting.
That doesn't make any sense.
I know. His team also did a luminol test. The luminol tests, in my opinion, are really, really important because it can show you if like something had been wiped away or, you know, something like that. I think that it can reveal a lot in the hands of people who are responsible. I think in the wrong hands, it can be used really irresponsibly. And if you didn't know, it's an organic compound, and when it's oxidized, it emits light. It's a phenomenon known as chemiluminescence. So, in other words, if you spray it on blood, it lights up. It glows.
Oh.
The room usually needs to be a little bit dark in order to see the glow, but that's how it works. You spray it, boom. The luminol revealed footprints that went from Kathleen's body to the kitchen and then kind of like went around the like island over to the sink and then over to like another shelf, and then the footprints disappear. Michael's defense team actually brought up some really good points that I thought were really interesting. One being that the crime scene photos were really inconsistent. There's what's called a skeletonized blood stain. If a droplet of blood falls on a surface and then it's wiped, the outer circle of the blood will remain while the inner circle is wiped away. And this is what it looks like.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And there were 2 photos of the same spot on the stairs where the blood was intact. It hadn't been touched. And then there was another photo where the blood had been wiped. Both photos were taken by the forensic team.
So there were 2 pictures of the same drop. One was there, and then the next picture, the drop is wiped.
And that wasn't the only police photo that seemed like it had been tampered with. There was another picture where it was a picture of the cabinet and there was a spot of blood, and in the same, like the next picture, there was no blood.
What the?
Yeah.
Wow.
Weird, right? The defense asked Dan George, the forensic expert, about the photos, and they were like why are they different than the other ones? He was like, I was told that it was a glitch. And then David Rudolph is like, a glitch? This is a glitch? Who told you that? Who told you it was a glitch, and why weren't we not informed? They should be telling the defense team if it was a glitch, you know?
Yeah.
Dan George is like, I don't know. I can't remember who told me that. It's so stupid.
That's sketchy as hell.
I know. The investigative team, like the forensics team, they didn't put any kind of tarp down when they were doing the investigation.
Oh my god.
And like I said earlier, they didn't wear any protective gear. Remember that?
Yeah, when the guy was like, it was so dry, we didn't even have to wear any protective gear. It's like, I'm sorry, what?
You should be wearing protective gear no matter what. Like, it's your job to investigate this and make sure it doesn't get contaminated, you know?
Yeah, and it's your job to already know that.
Yeah, Dan George actually testified that he was concerned with the way that the crime scene was being handled, and he admitted that he never documented in his report that he had found footprints during the luminol test. He just told the cops that. He didn't write it down, he didn't put it anywhere that he found footprints. That evidence can almost be completely discredited because there's no documentation of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
David Rudolph and the defense team explained that Kathleen's death was simply an accident. They stated that Kathleen was actually going up the stairs when she fell. They also said that she was incapacitated, she was wearing flip-flops, and it was a dark hallway, which it is. Like, the staircase is pretty dark. They said that after she initially fell backwards, she fell repeatedly after that, trying to get up. And so she was just sustaining injury after injury, trying to get back up. And eventually she sustained a bad enough injury that she could not get back up. And the defense team also brought in a forensic expert and a blood spatter analyst. His name is Henry Lee. He demonstrated that the blood spatter and the injuries were consistent with a fall down the stairs. He was actually hired in the O.J. Simpson trial, so he was also familiar with high-profile cases the way David Rudolph was. He is pretty controversial. A lot of people don't like him, but one of the most bizarre things that happened in court was Henry Lee was trying to explain blood spatter that had gotten super high on the walls, and he put ketchup in his mouth and he coughed, like he spit and coughed like on a canvas, and a lot of people found that distasteful and inconsiderate of the family.
Yeah. Didn't like blood spatter analysis I feel like, especially if you've worked in high profile cases before, like you should know that that's super inappropriate. But also and don't quote me on this because I don't know if this is actually, I think it's been proven as like something that is no longer admissible in court.
Oh.
I don't know though.
I believe
it is not my topic.
I don't think that it's very
Reliable?
reliable, yeah.
I don't think it is either. I did love Dexter.
I love Dexter. The defense weren't the only ones who brought in a blood spatter analyst, though. The DA also brought in a blood spatter analyst, and his name is Dwayne Deaver. Here's a picture of him. He also did a demonstration in court stating that Kathleen's injuries were a result of a blunt force object, like hitting her in the head. And he said that that's what it was consistent with. And the prosecution also said that Kathleen's murder was most likely committed with a custom-made fireplace blowpoke. It had been gifted to Michael and Kathleen by Kathleen's sister Candace, but it was missing during the whole time of the investigation.
Oh.
Later in the trial, the defense team presented it. And they were like, you looked over it. It was just here. And according to them, Michael's son, Clayton, had just stumbled upon it. The prosecution said that this was impossible, that there were multiple searches in the home. The prosecution said that that was impossible because at one point they had over 20 officers and they were there all day long and they never stumbled across the blowpoke. And so the main question at that time was the blowpoke planted by Michael's defense team? And they were like, you just didn't see it. It was here the whole time. Or were the police just doing a horrible job? Turns out they were doing a horrible job because they literally, like, later it was revealed that they did see it and they even had pictures of it.
Wow.
Yeah. It was later tested and found that the blowpoke had not been used in years. There was like dust on it, so it couldn't have been used as the murder weapon. But during trial, they said that that's how she got killed. David Rudolph, Michael's defense attorney, stated that there was no way that Kathleen's injuries were a result of being bludgeoned.
Mm-hmm.
They looked over 250 cases of beating deaths where they found that the most consistent injuries upon those deaths were skull fractures and brain trauma or both. Kathleen didn't have any. She didn't have brain trauma or skull fractures, and she didn't have any brain bruising even. And we already kind of went over Kathleen's autopsy report, but here's a diagram so you can kind of get a better idea of what her injuries looked like. And this is just a side note, but Kathleen's sister, her name is Candace Zamprini. Remember, she didn't believe that Michael was innocent. She believed that he was guilty. Kathleen's sister testified at the trial, and here's a picture of her. Remember Michael said that he was by the poolside that night of the incident?
Mm-hmm.
Candace said that she was at Michael's house just a couple days after Kathleen's passing. And she looked outside, like they were talking in the office, and there's like a window facing the pool.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked out at the pool and she saw that there was no furniture out at all. And this was after Kathleen had passed. If that's true, that means that Michael would have had to move the furniture back out when the documentary started.
Oh.
Meaning it was never out there. Meaning that he told the police that they were out by the pool, but they were just sitting on the ground.
What the hell?
Yeah, but in the documentary it shows the pool lounge chairs all laid out, like a little side table and everything. Isn't that weird? And what else is strange about Michael stating that the incident happened by the pool was that it was 51 to 60 degrees that night, so it was pretty cold.
Yeah.
And he was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. So the DA really attacked Michael's credibility. They stated that he was a liar, which he was. He did lie about those honorary like medals, you know?
Yeah.
Like he did lie about that. They wanted to point out that Michael had lied the night of Kathleen's passing.
Mm-hmm.
They stated that the wine glasses that were left by the pool didn't have Kathleen's fingerprints on them at all.
Okay, so he staged it.
Either he did or the police did.
Oh.
And it's like, it could have been police tampering if we consider the skeletonized blood stains,
Yeah.
or Michael placed it there just thinking that the cops cops wouldn't check.
Yeah.
He admitted in court that sometimes he just lied because it was easier. They questioned him about him lying about the medals, and that's kind of what he said. He was just like, I just lie sometimes because it's easier, which is so weird. But this is where we get into the motives that were presented in court. The prosecution revealed that Michael was bisexual, which according to Michael's brother and his kids, they were all aware of it.
Oh.
But the way that the prosecution revealed it was like really homophobic. But what they may not have known, and that's why his bisexuality was important, was that Michael was having an alleged affair. The prosecution found over 2,000 photos of naked men on Michael's computer that were saved, and I think some were printed out as well, which is like whatever. But they also recovered conversations between him and a young man named Brent Wolgamont, who was 26 years old, and he was an escort. And he testified in court that he and Michael had a lot of conversations about things that they wanted to do together, sexual acts and stuff. The conversations were really sexually driven. All of the conversations were online, so they were never taken out of, you know, the online relationship. But Michael had even printed some of the conversations off, and he had them in a desk drawer, like under some stuff. Kathleen was preparing for a conference call the night of her murder, and she asked to use Michael's computer. And the prosecution theorized that Kathleen had seen the conversations and the images maybe, and she was shocked about it. And so they got in a fight, and Michael got really enraged and ended up beating her to death. Another motive that was presented in court was money, of course. They were struggling quite a bit financially, like I said, because Kathleen was working for Nortel, and Nortel was going bankrupt. And so they were kind of stressed out about money. The plumbing in their house was all messed up. Like, Kathleen couldn't take showers. She was only taking baths because their plumbing was messed up and they couldn't afford to get it fixed. And it turns out that Kathleen had a $1.5 million life insurance policy. And so money definitely could have been the motive. The trial took about 3 months, and then on October 10th, 2003, after 4 days of deliberation, the jury found Michael Peterson guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When this happened, when he was sentenced in court, the judge was like, this is your time to like turn to the courtroom and say what you want to say or whatever, you know? He turned around to his kids and he was like, they were like really upset, like the daughters, Margaret and Martha. Michael turned to them and he was like, it's all right, it's all right. And he just like was smiling at them, and he was just like, it's all right. And here's a picture of him doing that. However, Michael held on to his innocence. In 2006, Michael filed an appeal with the North Carolina Court of Appeals, which was rejected, but the decision was not unanimous. So because of that, he was granted another right to appeal with the North Carolina Supreme Court in 2008. On August 21st, 2008, a new theory came to light regarding the case. There's this guy named Larry Pollard, and he is an attorney. He's a friend of the Petersons, and he held a news conference where he publicly presented the evidence supporting the idea that this could have been an owl attack. He stated that there were microscopic owl feathers that were found in Kathleen's hair. And after consulting with a bird expert, he concluded that an owl's talons could have caused the lacerations on the back of her head. Surprisingly, owls are known to do dives and attack on humans. Like, it's pretty common.
Oh, wow.
They theorized that the lacerations may have been inflicted by a barred owl, which they are pretty common in Durham, North Carolina.
Oh.
There's probably not very many cases where people have died from getting attacked by an owl, but it's an interesting theory to say the least.
Yeah.
Larry also believed that Kathleen was attacked outside and then she ran inside, which would explain the blood outside and also, you know, those little droplets of blood where you're like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That would support that, and it would also make sense why if she was getting attacked and then she was running up the stairs to escape, maybe she started to get a little dizzy after drinking and having running some Valium.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, she starts bleeding profusely, you know? Like, I
Yeah.
could see how, and then she falls down the stairs and those injuries get worse. What's really interesting about that is if that's the case, like, she got attacked outside and then she ran inside, why didn't Michael hear anything at all?
Yeah.
You would think, like if I got attacked by an animal, I think I would be screaming and hollering, and I'm pretty sure that's what anyone would do, because you're not expecting it and you get attacked, you know?
Yeah.
So this is really interesting as well. When Kathleen passed away, she had her own hair in her hand, and in her own hair that she had in her hand that was pulled from the root, that's where they found the tiny feathers and a small sliver of wood. But I think it's really strange that she was holding her own hair. Was it because she was like trying to, like, you know, if it was attacking her, what if she was like, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's really strange. It's plausible. Anything's possible, you know?
Yeah.
The theory was ultimately dismissed because it's just not enough, and also, like, by this point they had already decided that Michael was guilty, so it didn't really help anything, so it was dismissed. Michael's defense team requested a new trial in 2009. He actually got a new defense team and they requested a retrial, but that was declined. And I spoke really briefly about this guy, but do you remember Dwayne Deaver?
Yeah.
He was the prosecution's blood analyst during Michael's trial, and he ended up being a complete fraud. After an audit at the agency where Dwayne Deaver worked was completed, they found that he had falsely represented 34 cases, and he also was found to withhold evidence on a few of the cases as well.
Wow.
So he was found to have misled the judge and the jury in Michael's case. They found that Dwayne Deaver had given materially misleading and deliberately false testimony about the bloodstain evidence, and that he had exaggerated his training, experience, and expertise.
Oh my god. So what did this mean for the case?
Michael was released from prison December 16, 2011, after serving almost 10 years in prison. He was released on $300,000 bail, and then he was placed under house arrest while he awaited his new trial.
Oh.
So during this whole thing, Michael was going broke because he had to pay for, like, the expensive defense team, and, like, him and Kathleen were already kind of broke
Because of her job.
because of her job, yeah. So David Rudolph decided to represent Michael pro bono for his final trial in 2017. This new trial began February 17th, 2017, 16 years after Kathleen's passing.
Wow.
Michael entered what's called an Alford plea. If you don't know what that is, it's basically where the prosecution is like, we have all this evidence against you. The evidence says that you're guilty and you have to admit that. He admits that the evidence says that he's guilty.
Wow.
In his new trial. So the judge sentenced Michael to 86 months in prison with credit for time previously served. And so since Michael already served that time, then he was let off.
Oh.
Yeah. So he didn't face any additional prison time.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And I think that there are just so many strange points in this case. Like, it's weird to me that Michael didn't hear anything, and it's weird to me that Kathleen died within 5 minutes of him calling 911. I think it's really strange that the documentary is so biased. Also, towards the end of production, Michael and the editor, this lady who works on the documentary, she edits the videos, had a budding romantic relationship. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that it's ultimately just sad that Kathleen got lost in the mess of all of it, you know? Like, this, number one, it shouldn't have gone on for as long as it did. It shouldn't have been the controversy of Michael being guilty or innocent. It should have always been about Kathleen. And I think it's just sad that she got left behind in the mess. And I hope that her family can just move on.
Find peace.
Yeah, find peace. I think ultimately victims should always be prioritized in cases like this. And I think that in this case specifically, it felt more like the defense team and the prosecution were like, I'm gonna win. No, I'm gonna win. Like, when you watch the court, like the trial, even the documentary, like, it just feels like they're competing rather than,
Like, the truth of what happened.
yeah, not fighting for the truth, just wanting to.
Yeah, it's a competition instead of like a seeking out the truth kind of thing.
Yeah. Martha and Margaret still support their dad to this day. They stand behind him 100%. A few months ago, like 6 or 7 months ago, HBO came out with a new series based off of this staircase. Margaret is really upset about the release of the show. She thinks that it's like not a fair or accurate representation of what happened. I think ultimately, I hope the family can find peace, like you said. But yeah, that is the story of the staircase.
Wow. You know, you're left with more questions than answers ultimately with this one. But I think you
Yeah.
did a fantastic job telling the story and remaining unbiased.
Thank you. I tried. I think ultimately we'll never really know what happened that night, but I think that it's pretty clear that a majority of this case is poor police work.
We're gonna finish our makeup and then be back.
All right, we're back. Thank you so much for being here as always.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Have a good day.
Have a good day or night or beautiful morning.
Mm-hmm.
We love you.